Welcome to the PIO Podcast, a place for all things public information related for police, fire, EMS, and local government. An open forum to learn, grow, and develop your public information skills. Your host, Robert Tornabene, is a public information officer with over 10 years in the field and 27 years of law enforcement background. In each episode, we will explore different aspects of the public information officer profession. Weekly, we will delve into the field of public information by talking to other PIOs. So sit back and enjoy this episode.
On March 22nd, 2021, Boulder, Colorado had a lone gunman enter the King Soper store and immediately began shooting people. Boulder police officers immediately responded to the location, and upon entering the store, one of the officers was ambushed by the gunman and killed. The suspect was taken into custody after a brief exchange of gunfire with the other Boulder police officers. In all, including the Boulder police officer, 10 people were killed. The Boulder Police Department had recently acquired the services of Dion Watt as a public safety public information officer. If you want to examine a textbook way of handling the incident as a public information officer, please observe Dion's work. She did an outstanding job. My thoughts and prayers are out with Dion and the entire Boulder Police Department family and the other victims in this senseless, tragic loss. Good morning. Today we are on with Lieutenant Christopher Cook from the Arlington Police Department in Arlington, Texas. Chris, thank you for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for the invite.
So, Chris, you're the PIO with Arlington PD. How long have you been the PIO there?
So just been about 10 years, which is a long time, being a sworn position. Started in the media office as a sergeant in 2011 and made lieutenant in 2012. And you can either say I got stuck here or I've tried to do things the right way and maybe they see some value, or people just don't want to do the job, right? So whatever reason, it's been a very rewarding experience because it is a unique position, as you're fully aware.
Right. So what's your background? How did you get into the office as a sergeant?
Yeah, so I started in law enforcement in 1995. I was just out of the military. I was in the U.S. Air Force. Just got home, went to the police academy, and did like most officers, enjoyed the streets, worked patrol. Those were my rookie years, had a lot of fun. And at some point, I went back to college, got my master's degree in 2008 from the University of Texas in criminology. And I made sergeant that year. At that point, I was in the traffic unit still and was managing a highway drug interdiction a team. We had a lot of fun, chasing dope and money and all that. And then in 2011, I was actually on vacation up on the East Coast and got a call from then. It was a different police chief who said, "Hey, have you ever thought about going into media relations?" And I was like, "No, never thought about it, and actually kind of happy where I'm at." And he said, "Well, hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I'm moving you as soon as you get back. I'll have a special assignment for you." And that's how I ended up in the media office. It was supposed to start out as like a temporary assignment just to do. At the time, our mayor, which was a different mayor, was going through some challenges, some death threats and other stuff. And so they needed somebody sworn to come in and kind of manage that piece of it. And that's how I ended up there. And from there, the rest is history. We really started building our team. When I first got down there, it was just me and one civilian who had a background in newspapers. And over the years, now our team consists of 5 of us. It's me as a lieutenant who kind of serves as commander. I certainly have other roles in the department. I manage our honor guard and some other ancillary duties as well. I have a sergeant that reports to me that tries to manage day-to-day operations. And then we have 2 civilians, a former television reporter and a former news producer. And we have 1 sworn officer that kind of manages our social media. So we're very diversified as far as our skill sets and what we're able to accomplish.
Well, that's very good. That's for like a medium-sized agency in a fairly large town. That's not a bad number to have.
No, actually, it's a perfect combination. And I like the approach on not being all sworn. I know some agencies will go to one extreme or the other. It's either all civilian or all sworn. I like kind of the blended approach because, quite frankly, at the end of the day, at least my civilians who have backgrounds in media, they were able to teach me not to talk in cop lingo and acronyms and how to connect with residents. And that was really helpful when I was new and had no idea what I was doing. Certainly, I've learned, from the School of Hard Knocks over the years. We've experienced a lot of things in Arlington. We're a big city. We're the 48th largest city in the United States, home to 2 professional sports franchises. So we have a lot of things that happen out here, right? But at the end of the day, it's all about the way that you communicate, the way you connect with residents and business owners. And that's what I've been able to learn the most from having a blended approach to our media team, being professional staff, team members, and sworn officers.
Very nice mix. It gives you that advantage of not having to lock yourself into one area. I like how you have an officer that's handling social media. You have the journalists that are there, the former journalists that are handling probably a lot of the written documents and stuff that you're putting out. That's nice. And obviously you or the sergeant are probably the face of the department when it comes to speak.
Yeah, for the most part, we do allow our professional staff to also get on camera. My television reporter, he was kind of a one-man band, if you will. And so he's certainly a great video production guy to go to. So, but he also knows how to manage media relations, right? He already has all those relationships. And so from that perspective, we've been able to really diversify the team, and it allows us to really get off. Now, if we have a critical incident that's really big, certainly, the chief may be the spokesperson, or it may be one of our PIOs. Maybe we'll use a uniform. One thing that I try to do, though, even though we have a team of 5, quite frankly, when we have case updates on, I'll give you an example. Just the other day, we have a homicide that's unsolved. A lot of times I'll grab the homicide sergeant or the detective because the media and the public, they get tired of seeing the same old PIO from time to time, right? So it also showcases the talents and skill sets that we have as a department. So we try to do that as well from that perspective, and it works good here in Arlington.
Are you prepping those other staff members then before they go into those interviews?
Yeah, absolutely. We have first of all, every new officer that's hired in, and we have about 700 sworn officers and about 250 to 300 professional staff team members. They all go through a 4-hour media relations class that I teach. And that's in the initial academy, whether it's the civilian side of the academy or the police academy side. And so they get exposed. Of course, I know there's a lot of things going on in the academy. I mean, they're just trying to learn how to be police officers, right? So, memory retention on that is limited. But what I try to couch is the misnomer that media is all bad. For some reason, it's been my experience inherently when we sign up to be police officers, we have that belief that they're always out to get us, right? Or they don't tell the full story, or they believe the crook over the cop. And so I try to break that down by highlighting real case examples and relationships that we have. We're in the 5th largest media market in the country. And by far, I think it's probably one of the best, just because I hear from other PIOs around the country who sometimes have some challenges and struggles that we don't really deal with. And so for the most part, we get a fair handshake, but I want to instill that in our new hires from day one. Teach them what a media staging area is. And just because somebody has a camera and they leave the staging area doesn't mean you can jack them up, right? They can go where any other citizen goes. And so anyway, at the end of the day, that's what we try to do. And then before they get on camera, to answer your question, we do a prep class that kind of has some interview skill sets. We give them a checklist, and we make sure that they're comfortable. We certainly don't make anybody get on camera that doesn't want to. And then the media is great, unless it's a live interview, which is very rare. If they make a mistake, they'll just say, "Hey, time out. Let's start over." And we explain that.
That's cool. Well, and that's based on the fact that you've worked with those reporters and then kind of develop that relationship, which is, I think it's paramount, especially when you have a critical incident, they'll work with you a little bit more because you're willing to work with them.
Absolutely. It's all about relationships. When you're in the middle of a critical incident, that's not the day to be shaking hands and trying to introduce yourself to the media market. Now, there are certainly advantages for me being in my position for a decade. We have some very long-standing positive rapport with career, reporters. And it's more important than even just the reporters. I mean, I'm talking, we know the people behind the cameras because they can make you look good, right? We know the producers, we know the news desk, we know the editors. We can work with them on headlines. All of that is built upon relationships and recognizing they have an important role in our democratic society to convey information to our citizens. We have a different role, which is access points, right, to our police departments. And so we certainly don't, act like we're the barrier. We want to make sure that we're the facilitator. So, for example, if they want an interview with our police chief, we don't want to be the person saying, no, you got to go through me. We want to be the enabler so that we can get them access to the police chief. And from that perspective, yeah, you're right. Relationships are important, and you got to make time for them. We try to hold an annual media mixer. Certainly COVID has changed the world, and it's been difficult to get together in person, but we always, every media market, there's a transition of people that occur, and we try to bring our folks out. And it's just an event, not to really, do news stories, but to get to know us, get to know our command staff, get to know our lieutenants and our sergeants, because those are the people they're going to run into out on the streets when we're not there, right?
Right. Chris, you said that you hold a 4-hour media class. That's in the academy. So you guys have your own academy for your department?
Yeah, we have our own in-house police academy.
Okay.
We also do a media relations class for supervisors, which is more in depth because, the sergeants are going to be that first line of defense when there's an issue potentially between a reporter or a field officer to be able to intervene and mediate. I have seen departments that, you have to in your time. I mean, they're on YouTube. There have been incidents where officers have controversies, with reporters, and they never end well. It doesn't serve media stations well. It doesn't serve the police departments well, and it certainly doesn't serve our citizens well. So we try to be very proactive. Our department policy allows the ranking police official to release factual information at scene. We're a little unusual in that regard. I know a lot of departments are very centralized. You got to go through the PIO, or you've got the media team. We don't do that here in Arlington because, quite frankly, we believe that if we train our officers, we give them a badge and gun, we give them car keys to drive, vehicles, we can trust them to provide basic information. And so that's why that training is very important. Now, you won't see a lot of officers doing it. Certainly, they'll rely on the PIO when they need to, but that supervisor school is very important. Matter of fact, I just taught one the other day. And it's more important than ever now in this reform era that we're in, because quite frankly, there's a lot of, animosity out there. And we can't let that derail the positive progress we've made with media relations across the country. We've got to recognize they have a very important and vital role to do, just as we do. And so that's why that training is important. But yeah, we have an in-house academy that kind of affords us that ability.
Outstanding. So, Chris, you authored an article that went into Police Chief Magazine this month in March, mitigating public information risks. So you had a lot of key points in there, and I kind of cherry picked them out of there. And one of them is, and we kind of already talked about it, but networking. Why is that so important for the public information officer?
Yeah, so, I've had the luxury of getting to know a lot of people over the years. One of the first conferences I ever got invited to was IECP's PIO conference. Matter of fact, Sean Whitcomb, who's no longer in the profession, but he had a very rewarding career with Seattle PD. He invited me to that, and I became involved. And then, before long, I ended up being the chair of the IECP PIO committee in 2015, served a 3-year term. The only reason I stepped down was Major Cities Chiefs Association, which we're a member of, asked me to create a PIO committee, which represents 78 of the largest agencies across the United States and Canada. And I'm also, as you're aware, the vice president of the National Information Officers Association, which is another conference that allows for networking. And I'm scheduled to be sworn in as president this August. I mention all of that not to say, look at me and look what I've been able to do. I mention that to highlight the networking opportunities that exist. Not that you need to be involved in every one of, you don't have to be at ICP, NIOA, major cities, or GSM Con, or there's just so many people doing great work. FBI LEDA, Judy Powell. There are so many ways to network. Here's the reason it's important. There are times, we had an officer involved shooting a little bit over a year ago that was very controversial. Unfortunately, it led to an officer being indicted in the case. I had to pick the phone up and call Los Angeles PD, Josh Rubenstein, he's since retired from LAPD, and said, "Hey, have you ever dealt with this?" And he said, "Yes, we have." And he used the Trader Joe's situation and was able to send me, a draft release that he used. I also picked up the phone and called TJ Smith, who was the spokesman for Baltimore. Had I not been networked with these individuals, I wouldn't have these contacts, right? Because quite frankly, when you're in the thick of it, sometimes you need to just bounce some ideas off. And it's not to say that we don't have great relationships in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We do. We have our own group called the North Texas PIO Group. And we try to, before the pandemic, we were doing monthly luncheons and we did quarterly meetings. It's just ways that you can reach out. And it also allows you to get some intel, because at these, when you're networking with folks, if I'm getting a series of open records requests from an investigative reporter, if I, put that out to the group, maybe the other PIOs are like, yeah, I got that too. And it telegraphs to me, okay, this is going to be a regional story, or this is more broad. It's not narrowly focused just on Arlington. So there's so many advantages. And quite frankly, we're seeing now, Robert, that the resiliency is very important. It's been very taxing over the last year and a half with the pandemic, with the social and civil unrest that's occurred throughout the country. By networking, you're able to hear from someone that's in the same boat as you, right? And so you're able to just kind of network from the standpoint that, they're going through it too. We're going to get through this together, and you're able to help one another out. So that's why networking is very important.
I like the way your take on that. I like the fact that you reached out to somebody when your agency's going through a very troubling situation, because maybe you haven't dealt with it, or just maybe, hey, I need a different take on what I'm writing up. Can you give me an example of what you got? I love that idea of reaching out to other PIOs to say, hey, did you see this before? I like that. That is a great thing that new PIOs may be too afraid to even say, because they're new and they want to say, okay, I can handle this, not realizing they don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, there is no shame or embarrassment at all. I mean, I've been in this, the PIO role for 10 years. I still call on my friends and allies. As a matter of fact, the first big lesson that I learned was from Jeremy Silbert, who was at Baltimore PD's. I think he's going to another agency soon. And Jeremy told me, hey, don't ever get out on camera without reviewing body-worn camera. Why? Because they learned a lesson in Baltimore, right? And that always, little things like that, you would think, yeah, that sounds right. I should know that. But quite frankly, so don't ever look at asking for help as a sign of weakness. Quite frankly, the more we can network together and put our heads together, I think the public is better served, and thereby that enhances our profession. Because if PIOs do their job well, guess what? It's less people out there in the streets protesting, because there's more legitimacy. There's more buy-in from the public.
Right.
And so it is critical that the PIO role is so important, whether it's sworn, civilian, a mixture like we have, it doesn't matter. You got to have someone in the position, though, that knows how to do it, that can network, can ask for help when they need it. That way we all benefit, because quite frankly, if something goes wrong in Arlington, Texas, and we mishandle an incident in the public arena, that affects everyone else across the country. So that's why it's important to make sure we're connected well, we know what's going on, and can share best practices.
Absolutely. So Chris, you make a reference to a phrase or a term called relational policing as a tool to increase community trust. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, it's been around. I always say it's the way good police officers have been doing policing for years. It's about building relationships. And I'm talking about with community members, with visitors, with tourists, with your business owners, with employees. It's going into a restaurant at lunch, high-fiving with people, fist bumping, acknowledging folks. It's about going to your elementary school when you have time and taking a moment to read a book. It's about treating people fairly on a traffic stop or when you're taking a report. Let's face it, the vast majority of people, they don't have police contact every year. And if they do have contact, it's usually because they're in an enforcement role, because maybe they were speeding, they didn't have their seatbelt on, something's going on, or they've been victimized. So if we really believe that the vast majority don't have contact, that demonstrates how important it is to get it right from a relational standpoint. I can't take credit for the term. Police Chief Art Acevedo, who's headed to Miami now, but who is the Houston Police Chief, has really brought that term to the forefront. If you even search the hashtag relational policing, You'll see a lot of great things that Chief Acevedo has been trying to do, but it works because people, they can accept a rising crime rate. They cannot accept a police department that does not care, right? And so from that perspective, relational policing is really important, and it needs to be integrated in your messaging platforms. People need to see it. People need to know that cops are more than just writing tickets or putting people in jail. We change flat tires. We go out and we help people. We get people to shelters. We fix broken windows. I mean, there's so many things, and there's great police work that's happening at every agency across America. The PIO just has to be in that frame of mind to capture those stories and to share them.
Those are critical, that it is critical for agencies to do this. And just to give a kind of a, when you have the negative occur in your agency, that officer involved shooting, or that crime that an officer might have committed, under color of office, having those relations going on all the time will weather and temper the attitudes towards the police department, versus if you never had those relationships before. You can't build them after the fact.
You are spot on. Let me share this. Judy Powell, who's a good friend of mine, and most people know Judy. I mean, she's a wealth of knowledge, and I know she'd probably blush if I was saying all this about her, but she's a great person. She's fun and energetic. She has a passion for what she does. Judy said a long time ago, Chris, the role of branding and public relations is not solely fault on the PIO. If the agency's not building the relationships, if the agency's not doing what they need to be doing, it's all for nothing. I can write up a cute Facebook post, or I can come up with some innovative thing on Instagram. But if people see that and are like, that's not my experience with that police department, it doesn't work. Just think of this. What is the image when a citizen sees your police car rolling down the street? What does that evoke in their mind? Do they think, wow, that is a good agency. They treat people fair. They have a great deal of integrity, this and that. Or are they thinking, man, there's a lot of issues, man, with that. They're a speed trap kind of town, or whatever the case may be. That's why you're exactly right. If you don't have the relationships on the front end, you're going to run into problems when you have a controversial incident. And quite frankly, we already know this. A lot of times use of force, there's layers of controversy. Use of force is ugly when it's captured on video. It may be completely justified, but there's going to be issues if you don't have relationships. I always equate it to like the emotional piggy bank analogy. I'm trying to make these deposits year in and year out, day in, day out, month in, month out, because knowing we're going to take a withdrawal at some point. At some point, we're going to have an officer misconduct incident. At some point, we're going to have a controversial shooting. It's not, if, it's really when. And so you want to make sure you're in the best possible position from a relational standpoint when that happens, because at the end of the day, when I'm on camera or my chief's on camera talking about this controversial incident, I want people to walk away with, you know what? I trust this police department to manage it and to handle it and to get it right. You can only do that with relationships.
Absolutely. And here's another way to segue into this. So controversial incidents, that's another part of this article that you wrote, such as a deadly force incident, require that timely dissemination of facts and information to the public. Why is that so critical for executives in the department to be aware of it?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many countless examples of where, as a profession, we have failed. I'm certainly, and I'm pointing the finger at me as well, where we're slow. Social media has been a game changer. I mean, we like to say that, but quite frankly, it has been. It has elevated the speed at which information travels. Okay, and so we have to be cognizant of the fact that the public wants to know, and their thirst for information is enormous in the first, sometimes few minutes of an incident. There are times there is people tweeting and Facebooking and Instagramming and all this stuff before I even have my notification. Media's calling me because they're seeing something, right? And so we have to get it right. Being fast doesn't mean you get a free pass on being inaccurate, right? We've got to make sure that our facts are vetted, but we got to get information out quickly. If I get to a scene and I'm too slow to get the information on a controversial incident. Guess what? All these people that claim their eyewitness, testimony, and they saw exactly what happened, they're the ones going to be, telling the story. They're going to control the narrative.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And we cannot lose sight of the fact that there are people out there with agendas that sometimes lie, that make up information on social media. They hide behind anonymity. They say whatever they want. There's no accuracy filter, as I like to say, on social media. So that puts us behind the curve to begin with. I want to be projected in Arlington as, you know what? When something's going on, we're the authoritative source of information. Well, the only way I can be viewed that way is if I'm timely. I can't wait, 4 hours into an officer-involved shooting, or like the other night, Six Flags. They thought there was an active shooter. In reality, what happened was we had a teenager shoot another teenager in the arm outside of the park near the front gate. But because of that, it was only 2 shots fired. People were getting trampled. We had broken legs. Why? Because, and look what happened in Boulder yesterday. People are inherently fearful of these active shooter scenes. If I wait an hour to say this is not an active shooter, there's a lot of community harm that has happened.
Yep.
And so it behooves us, and it's incumbent upon our supervisors, our field units, to make sure they're getting the information to PIOs that we can adequately and quickly and accurately portray what happened. If it's not an active shooter, I want to say it's not an active shooter. It's an isolated incident. If it's an active shooter, then I want to say, just like yesterday, it's an active shooter, and we're there. We're trying to manage the incident. So anyway, from that perspective, yeah, you've got to be. You cannot wait. And it also, if I can, I may add this too. Video evidence. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, what did police do? We used to say, well, we're not going to release any video because we don't want to jeopardize the investigation. We don't want to mess anything up with the district attorney or the attorney general, whatever. That's over. Those days are gone. If you have an incident, you got to get out in front of it. And I don't care if it's good, bad, ugly, indifferent, neutral. It doesn't matter. You've got to start getting in front of video. And I know a lot of agencies are trying to move in that direction, and I applaud them for their efforts. Here in Arlington, we try to release video on officer-involved shootings within 48 hours. Now, that seems really aggressive, and there's a couple things that have to happen for me to get to that finish line. We always afford the family of the decedent an opportunity to view the video. Sometimes they don't want to see it, and that's fine. But I want to give them that opportunity before they see it on the national news or the local news. Right. Sometimes they take us up an opportunity. It's a tough meeting to be in. That's their loved one, regardless of what happened and the conduct that the suspect did. That's still their loved one. That's somebody's son or daughter or aunt, uncle, or mom, dad, whatever. Right. So that all factors into whether I can get to that 48-hour finish line or not, to make sure that we have all of that navigated before we just dump video. But anyway, that's where we're headed. Yeah.
Outstanding. So Chris, why is visual storytelling so important?
I think that people like to see good stories, and we know, and it's not the media's fault. I can't send out a news release every time we do something good. It's not going to get covered.
Right.
Let me use this as an example. If you have an academy graduation, unless there's something odd or extraordinary or unusual about it, I mean, you can send a news release, but unless you're like in a really small town, that's not going to get covered in Dallas-Fort Worth.
Right.
Because why? Everybody has academy graduations all the time.
Right.
Now, if I have a father and son or something odd, and then maybe they come and cover it. So visual storytelling falls on the agency, falls on the public information officer to do. And there's no shortage of great work, as I mentioned earlier. And so visual storytelling allows us to humanize officers. And that's what really the end game that we should be trying to get to. People need to see us not as enforcers, right? They need to see us as guardians of the community. They need to see us as we're just like you. We wear a uniform. We have some powers vested in us based upon the oath of our office. But at the end of the day, I've got sons and daughters. I go to church. I go to Little League practices. I mean, we do the same thing that everyone else is doing, but we love our community. Ask any police academy graduation, why did you join the profession? They're going to tell you 9 times out of 10, because I want to make a positive difference in my community. You only get to project that if you're doing good visual storytelling. And visual storytelling, to me, it's more than just text on a Facebook post. It is video. It's enriching content. It is powerful, humanistic stories that are authentic and genuine. You've got to be careful where it doesn't become public relations spin. It's got to appear that, you know what? Oh, wow, this is just a good story, right? Our society loves good stories. Don't let anybody tell you different. I know our newscasts are filled with doom and gloom and controversy, and that stuff sometimes sells. But I'm going to tell you right now, if you put a great humanistic story out there, it's going to do well on your social media platforms. So break your own news, be your own visual storyteller. That's what's really important from my perspective.
I agree, Chris. For an example like that's about getting your staff and your leadership to let you know that these things are occurring. As a PIO, I was out of town. I was out of state, actually, in my former agency. And I got a phone call from a sergeant said, I'm sending you a picture. You're not going to believe this. And it was a picture of one of our officers giving up his shoes for a homeless person in the cold. He gave up his boots. That turned into a national story, ended up on the national morning news about an officer giving up his shoes for a homeless man and making sure he got a bag of clothing that would keep him warm. And all the guy really wanted was a pair of shoes. And I would have never known about it being out of town, but the supervisor knew, hey, this is something that we need to tell. And it went from local to national, like within an hour.
Yeah, I mean, we've got examples like that as well. Last summer we were at a parade, or a summer two summers ago, because the pandemic. And one of our honor guard members, which is the team that I supervise, his shoe became untied, but he's holding the flag. Honor guard protocol is there's a lot of military bearing that's required. He can't just set the flag down and tie his shoe. This kid ran out from the crowd, tied his shoe, and we just happened to be there to capture the moment. That was a national story, and it's just about tying a shoe. Another program we just started this year, and it's been very successful. We've had a lot of national coverage on it. I wanted to change the persona about how the public feels about body-worn cameras. It seems like when you hear there's going to be body-worn camera footage, it's like the public braces themselves. It's like, we're about to see something really bad, or we're about to see a shooting, or we're about to see somebody getting killed or drugged by a car. And so we know, and I know cops hate the word routine, but there's a lot of routine police work that happens. We capture a lot of routine video. So we started a new program on social media called Body Worn Camera of the Week. And we take routine video. I'll give you an example. An officer the other day was he knows how to make kid balloons. It's some kind of skill set he learned in college. So he carries with him all these balloons and this little air pump. And when he sees kids, he gets out of his police car, makes these little animal balloons, and his body-worn camera captured it. I threw that on there. It did amazing. And it shows people there's a lot more to police work than chasing bad guys and pulling guns and getting in car chases and being involved in shootings. So it has been a phenomenal program. Now, granted, I know when I talk about it, some states will tell me, yeah, but our state is really strict on releasing body worn. I get it. If you're in a state that you can't do it, you can't do it. But look for other ways to connect, to be that visual storyteller.
Right. No, that's outstanding. So, Chris, how do you balance your work life and your personal life? Obviously, we had a conversation about what happened last week when you were on break with your family, but how do you balance that?
Well, the good thing is my wife is a public information officer for the Field, Texas Police Department. She's been in law enforcement almost 20 years, and so she's well known in the profession. She's taught at IECP and Major Cities Chiefs and NIOA and all of our groups, GSM Con, the Smile Conference. I mean, there's just so many. So she gets the role that, hey, it gets really busy. Now, Mansfield, much smaller than Arlington. I always joke with her. She's been on camera twice this year. I've probably been on camera once a week. So it's just different. So she understands when duty calls and how it works and the late night phone calls. To your point, though, you do have to find a balance. And this is what's really important. I'm also a doctoral student. I don't know if I told you, and I'm in year I'm fixing to finish year 2, and it's a tough program. And it's a brick and mortar program. It's Tarleton State University, which is a member of Texas A&M. And it is not an easy ride. It's not an online program. I know some people say, I'm in an online PhD program. I get a PhD in a year. No. This is like a 6-year program. So you have to balance, though, work life, school life, and personal life. If you don't, you will get burned out.
Right.
And it'll lead to unfortunate things. It'll lead to marital issues. It'll lead to job performance issues, right? You want to be able to come to work and have a good time and have fun, right? And so, I love Jeff Thompson. I'm sure many of your listeners know Jeff Thompson. Jeff Thompson has worked for NYPD for many years, and Jeff does a phenomenal job on this topic in particular, making sure that you're taking care of yourself. It's mental wellness. Just like, yesterday, I reached out to Dion Wall, who's dealing with a horrific situation in Boulder. Not only did they have many lives lost from a community perspective, but they lost one of their own that was responding to that call. And I knew I wasn't going to call her because, you know what, her phone's probably blown up, but I just wanted to send her a small message that, hey, I'm thinking about you and I'm praying for you. And I am so sorry about the evil in this world, because we do need to check in with one another when we're dealing with high profile, high emotionally charged events, because it can wear on you.
Right.
And so I invite all of your listeners, make sure you're checking on your peer PIOs, make sure that they have what they need. And it's just good to get hey, thinking of you today. That's what's so great about these conferences. And there's so many of them to go to. It's kind of like you're able to recharge your batteries. And so if you don't know Jeff Thompson, I hate to do it, it sounds like a shameless plug, but I'm going to tell you, look him up, get him on your PIO podcast. He'd probably be more than willing to talk about just that issue, balancing work-life demands with your personal life.
I wrote his name down, so I will reach out to him. I think he'd be an outstanding person to have on the podcast. So thank you for that. I appreciate that, Chris. All right, so we're going to go to rapid fire questions. These will be easy for you. Last good book you read?
So being a doctoral student, Crime in the American Dream was the last book. It was a good book. Talks about the reason we have a elevated crime picture in the United States is because of our, we're all striving for the American dream. And there's no finish line that says this is where, when you're done with it. And so it was a good read, though. Put a lot of theoretical perspective onto some of the crimes that we deal with as a society.
Cool. Favorite sport?
Baseball.
I'm not going to ask you your team because I already know what it is. All right. So you're in the South, bourbon, scotch, beer, or wine?
So I'm not a big alcohol drinker, but certainly I do enjoy a glass of Moscato every once in a while with my wife. And they say it's healthy. The doctors anyway say it's healthy. So there you go.
I love a good glass of wine. Trust me. So that's okay. Personal motto. Do you have one? Yeah.
So one that I subscribe to: service before self, honor above all. If you approach everything in life that way, you're going to be okay. And you're going to make hard decisions, but that really rings true. And that's how I've tried to live my life.
That's a great motto. I love that. If you could spend a day in someone else's shoes, whose would they be and why?
So that would definitely be my wife, because she always says to me when she's mad at me, I wish you could be in my shoes for one day. She does a phenomenal job at just managing the household, managing the kids. And so I would love to just check that one off and say, hey, I did it, right?
Awesome. If you could do anything, I would blank.
I would be a pilot. If I could go back, I would have got my degree, went in the Air Force, and tried to become an Air Force pilot. Yep.
Awesome. And by the way, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Climb a mountain or jump from a plane?
I would jump from a plane probably just to do, have the adrenaline rush.
Very cool. Chris, so final thoughts, anything else you want to share?
One thing I will tell to your listeners and to you, I appreciate the work that you do to really highlight the work that's going on across our profession. And to all of my friends out there, colleagues, and those that maybe we haven't met yet, you're doing a great job. It's been a really tough year, but your work does not go unrecognized. So make sure you get involved in some of these PIO groups. Even if you can't travel to a big conference, start something in your region, your community, so that you have somebody that you can talk to and bounce ideas off And so for that, I really appreciate the work that you do to highlight these important issues and the work that our public communications officials across the country are doing.
Very good. Chris, how best can people reach out to you? And I will put any of this ways you want in the show notes so they can do it if they need to.
Absolutely. So my personal Twitter is @CookTX, like Cook, Texas. So @CookTX. Certainly follow me there. I'll follow you back. My cell phone is available as well. Matter of fact, all the reporters and the media, hell, the community's got it. So 817-657-7296. Now, it always works better for me if it's a text. That way, because, unfortunately, they've been trying to sell me a car warranty, it seems like every other day. And I don't know, I don't want a car warranty. So sometimes if it's a number I don't recognize, I may not pick up. So if you text me first, and then my email is a great way too. It's Christopher.cook, COOK, @arlingtontx.gov, arlingtontx.gov. Always available to talk, bounce ideas. Matter of fact, we also do site visits, and I know that Austin PD is coming down in a few weeks. Minneapolis has visited us recently as they're trying to kind of, restructure their team. And then we have Albuquerque PD coming to visit. I have also done site visits. I visited Baltimore, Montgomery County, Maryland. I visited Mountain View out there with Katie Evans and Chris Young. They're phenomenal, and they're always willing to help. So there's so many ways that people can connect. But yeah, that's fine, sharing all that.
Awesome. I appreciate it, Chris. That's Christopher Cook. He's a lieutenant and the public information officer for the Arlington, Texas Police Department. Thank you, Chris, for coming on the show.
All right. Thanks. Appreciate it. Stay safe and have a great day.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. If you would like to contact the show, please email us at thepiopodcast@gmail.com. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast to get notified of the latest episode. If you are listening on a platform that allows reviews, please give us a review. We appreciate any review, good or bad. It helps us improve on each episode. Until next time, be safe.